Hello, everybody. This is Wendy Lovejoy of the YellowLetterMentoring.com. And we are going over your marketing. Today is about defining what is a motivated seller. And then, okay, that looks a little, there we go. Defining what is a motivated seller. And then, getting them to be attracted to working with you. So this is real estate investing. This is all about real estate investing. So we encourage you, hey, Cy, we encourage you to first make a decision that real estate investing is the vehicle that you want to use to get yourself financially free, or at least own some real estate that's going to help you build passive income. I know there's many different ways of creating passive income, but the one that is the strongest and the one that to me is the easiest to do, because it really works. Once you buy a house and rent it out, that tenant can pay you rent as long as they're in there. Once you take a property, fix it and flip it, that money comes to you immediately. You don't have to build 20 people on your downline who then build other people, who then build other people. You have to just build your business with a strong foundation. One of the things that I learned early in my real estate career is that most people don't understand what is the difference between a seller and a motivated seller. There's two different sellers we're talking about. A motivated seller is very, very different from a regular seller. So I like to define things. I've been in this industry now. I got started really in the late 80s, early 90s is when I really started taking training as a real estate agent and then a broker. But as an investor, I got started around 88 when I bought my first investment property, and took the training that I talk about all the time with Robert Allen, who is the founder of everything No Money Down. His first book, No Money Down by Robert Allen, is one of my most favorite books. And then his second book, which I don't even remember the title. I think next time I'm going to ask him, but that was the training that myself and about 3,000 people were in. It was the training of becoming a real estate investor. And one of the things that I love that Robert Allen did is he took the whole weekend and focused on teaching us mindset transformation, how to think differently. And I think a lot of people, they forget to take time to really, deal with themselves in becoming a real estate agent or a real estate investor. You have to take the time. It's so many people are thinking that this is an industry that's easy to get into. It's easy to get into as an investor. It's easy to get into as an agent, because you simply, as an agent, need to take a course. Some people do it in a week. Some people take months. Some people do it online. But the course is not what helps you. It gives you the terms. It gives you the understanding. But I liken it to the fact that when I was a kid, I went to school and I learned that 2 and 2 was 4. And I learned, my 1, 2, 3s, but really having application of the math didn't happen until my mom sent me to the store and I had to go and purchase something and come back with the right change. You don't really understand real estate, whether you're an agent. As an agent, you will not really understand real estate until you either list a property and get it to the closing table, or take a buyer out and get them to a closing table. You will not understand how to become a broker in real estate until you do both and then learn to deal with people, agents. If you are a person that's building your office as one broker, and then you have assistants helping you, which is a model a lot of your top producers like. You have to learn to understand personalities, or you're going to have a turnstile, people coming in and going out. As an investor, you're not going to really learn to become a real estate investor until you either wholesale a deal and get paid for taking it to the closing table, or you buy a property, fix it and flip it, do the whole deal, or you buy a property, fix it and hold on to it and rent it out. Until you accomplish those things, you're not really an investor. You are studying to be an investor. If you look at a doctor, he takes classes for years, he invests in classes for years, and then he goes and practices the art of being a doctor on real people. Until you're practicing the art of real estate investing or real estate sales on real people with real transactions, real deals, you will not have the success or the income that you're looking for. Okay, so the first thing that you want to understand is, what is a seller? So I looked up the word, even though I've studied it over and over. And, I have some books that we define this, especially in the Scripts book and the Yellow Letter Mentoring program book. But the seller is one who sells, okay? A seller is one who sells. Motivation is something motivating you to do something. So we're looking for motivated sellers. Motivated sellers are motivated to sell because of a situation they're already in. Your goal is to find these. When I first got started as an investor, as I mentioned, Robert Allen took a whole weekend teaching us how to think differently, because some of the things he told us made no sense to me. But my goal was to do what he told us to do so that we could have the success that we were looking for. We could learn to own property. He was teaching us how to own property and rent it out. And so then I got into real estate as an agent, and there I learned I had to list property and find buyers and take them out. I wasted a lot of months with one particular buyer who just wanted to hang out. He wasn't serious about buying property. But my broker at the time, who's passed away now, Chuck McGill, he did not train me by telling me what to do, but he trained me by letting me go out there and do it, and then ask him questions. And then he would question me back with stuff like, I remember coming to him and saying, Chuck, this guy, I'm taking him out every day, like at 6 o'clock. We have a standing appointment. He hasn't purchased anything yet. And Chuck started laughing. He said, well, did you ask him, does he want to buy? But what I was asking the guy is, are you coming out to look at houses today? Or are you available to look at houses today? He said, no, ask him, are you available to buy a house? And then qualify him to buy the house. And so once I did that, then I realized, I asked the guy, he said, no, I'm not really looking to buy a house. I just like hanging out with you. And that really annoyed me, but that's how I was trained. And then I was trained to focus on listings, which is what Mike Ferry told us. And now his son, Tom Ferry, has taken the coaching of the Ferry organization to the next level. And he also teaches that you have to master listings. When I first got started in real estate, I started in ERA. ERA taught us to farm an area. Farming an area basically means you get a list, a zip code. It's the same thing for real estate investors. You need to focus on a zip code. Stop looking all over the place for any deal that happens to you. Good evening. Thank you, George. Good evening to you. But you have to really focus on finding motivated sellers in a specific zip code. So for me, I started in the Queens area. I started in Cambria Heights, Queens. Actually, I started in Queens Village because that's where my broker's office was. And then by starting in Queens Village, it spilled out to other neighborhoods, then it spilled out to other states. And now I have people that work with me from other countries, but you have to start somewhere. Farming, most people call it, either driving for dollars or they say that they're working a certain zip code. But I encourage people to start with a list of at least 500 names or a block, a community, a subdivision with at least 500 addresses. The more you fine tune your focus, the more it's going to grow. Most people think, well, you know what, if I get a list of 20,000 names. One of my students about 2 years ago, he came to me and he had invested in a list with over 100,000 names. But the thing is, he was writing these people, the letter he was using wasn't that great, but because his list was so big, which was very expensive, he was getting some people calling him back. But when they called him back, he didn't know what to really say. So he got a lot of people that were not really motivated, tied up with him, so he wasn't making any money. And then I told him, you must weed out the non-motivated. So a motivated seller is somebody who's motivated by a divorce, a foreclosure, a job loss, a job increase, a promotion. Kids have moved out to go to college or gotten married. Kids come back because they're married and they need to stay with with the family until they get on their own feet. Or they need to sell quickly because, they were left the home by the death of a family member and now they just simply want to get rid of it. Or they have a family house and somebody is not taking good care of that home and it's costing them more. They're getting fined by the city or the neighborhood is complaining about them. Different situations. Maybe they have tenants. They're just sick and tired of their tenants. Or they have upcoming repairs that they can't afford to do. And so they want to just get rid of the property. These people are motivated. They're going to sell their situation. I recently had a young lady, and I call her young because she had very young energy, but this lady was in her late 70s, and when we started the transaction, within 2 weeks of starting the transaction, she got very, very sick. So she was motivated to sell immediately so she could have the money for her family when she went into the hospital. And so again, that is motivation. But if you have somebody that says they want to sell and they just want to test the market, that's not a person that's motivated because they're trying to see, do they really want to sell? Is this something, worth talking about? Or if they only want to sell if they can get, this crazy amount of money that they've come up with. And so you have to master qualifying them. Instead of just, there was a time when I first started real estate, until I understood this process, I had some listings that were just overpriced. So now I'm going back to sellers trying to get them to come down on price. And some of them were sold on, my house is worth $1 million. Doesn't matter that everybody else around me sold for $200,000. Mine is worth $1 million because I say it is. So you have to learn to educate the people that you're working with. And so you have to learn that, you have to educate the people that you're working with, but you can't educate others until you're educated yourself. And so one of the things you want to look at, we mentioned what a motivated seller is. We mentioned who they are. Then you want to know where you can find them. You can find motivated sellers by driving around a specific zip code. Get familiar in that zip code. For me, when I lived in Queens and I wanted to understand South Freeport by the water, I had taken my agents out to eat on Nautical Mile and I fell in love with that neighborhood. So I started farming that neighborhood. I started looking for houses in that area I could list. And then by doing that, I started looking for buyers in that area I could list. I also was encouraged by my broker if I wanted to, my mentor at the time, my coach, Mike Ferry, if I wanted to make more money, up the sales price that I'm focused on. And so I went and I worked in a higher neighborhood. So my commission checks were a lot higher, and I was doing the same work, just a different group of people. And so I started farming that area. I got a zip code. I looked for a neighborhood. I counted 500 homes, and I focused. I started dropping off my cleaners in that area. I started having lunch in that area. I started going to, whatever meetings or get-togethers were in that neighborhood. I would go, to the coffee shop in that neighborhood. I'd go do my food shopping in that neighborhood, just so I could speak to the people. When I'm farming an area that I want to wholesale, I do the same thing. I go hang out and start, getting to know that community and that neighborhood. And so I encourage you to do the same. So then when you pick your neighborhood, you can buy a list. There's different places like Melissa Data, List Source, so many places that sell you lists. You can do as little as 50 houses to, a few hundred houses. I've had people invest in thousands of houses, and I tell them you're wasting your money unless you're really going to master a good yellow letter template. A lot of the ones that you see online are not that great, but they serve their purpose. Some people will call you. I like to get the most out of my list. So I kept working with the yellow letter template until I perfected one that really gets people to call you back. Or you can do postcards, and you don't want to put stuff on your postcards like one of my students right now, he mentioned to me that he had purchased these postcards because he was working on only foreclosures. And I said, well, that's great, but what are you putting on your postcards? Because he said nobody's calling him back, and he had mailed out thousands of postcards. So I said, well, send me a copy of what you're putting on your postcard. And then I said, well, this is why nobody's calling you back, because people that are in foreclosure, they don't want everybody in the neighborhood to know. They forget that it is already public knowledge, but what they look at is, you put it on a postcard. They don't know which one of their neighbors saw it. And so the postcard said, your house is in foreclosure. Give me a call. I can, just all this stuff about foreclosure and describing the foreclosure process. And I said, you'd be better off sending them a yellow letter, but not sending them, public. Because some people, again, in foreclosure, I've knocked on doors from the list pendants, and some people, their spouse didn't even know they're in foreclosure because one spouse is paying the bills, but not telling the other that they haven't made the payment. So then they start ducking you. You want people to embrace speaking to you. And so there's a certain way of making that introduction that you want to deal with. And you don't want to just go in and put their business point blank in their face. It's not going to help. Another thing you can do to find people that you want to work with is you can, as I mentioned, you can buy the list. You can go down to the courthouse and make friends with people at the courthouse. Get the list pendants. Those are the people that are in pre-foreclosure. You can connect with the real estate agents. Some of the MLS sites allow people to see different lists like expired. You can go and look up online for sale by owner homes. But the best way to do it is to get known in a specific neighborhood. As I mentioned, I first started in Queens Village, so I got involved in the school is in the area. I'd go, speak to some of the teachers, see if there's, and you don't have to put a lot of money out. If you don't have money, you're going to have to put out a lot of sweat equity, and you're going to have to invest time in networking. This is not my networking training, so I'm not going to go into too much of that, but networking really has helped me grow my business, and it's helped my children grow their businesses. And the people I mentor and coach, I tell them the same thing. This is the best way to grow your business.